Today, we're diving into something really important, a commentary from the Journal of Psychopharmacology that asks a question we all need to think about. As psychedelic science becomes this huge mainstream thing, what is our responsibility to the indigenous communities who've been the stewards of these medicines for centuries? Okay, so let's just jump right in. I mean, you've seen the headlines, right? This whole psychedelic renaissance is in full swing. We're talking about psilocybin, ayahuasca, substances that are being looked at as total game changers for everything from depression to PTSD. The whole field is just blowing up with money, research, and new companies. But here's the thing. The story that we usually get is, well, it's not the whole story, not even close. Behind all the lab coats and patents, there's a much older, much deeper history. It's a story about knowledge that was cultivated for generations, and, way too often, a story about that knowledge being taken. To really get what's happening now, we have to go back, way back. Because, the substances at the very heart of this psychedelic boom, ayahuasca, psilocybin, peyote, iboga, they weren't just discovered in some lab. For centuries, they've been absolutely central to the ceremonies and the healing practices of indigenous peoples. This really gets to the core of it. You're looking at two totally different ways of seeing the world. On one side, you have the biomedical model. You see words like inert chemical, individualized treatment. That's pretty familiar, right? But then look at the other side, the indigenous knowledge column. The medicine isn't a chemical, it's a spiritual being. Healing isn't just about you. It's about the community, about your relationship with everything around you. It's a whole different universe. And this quote from Lobo Blanco, an Otomi leader who actually co-authored this commentary, just says it all. He says, "Our medicines are part of a sacred dialogue with the earth. They cannot be separated from the songs." Think about that. It means if you just isolate a molecule in a lab, you're missing the entire point. The healing is woven into the whole system, the songs, the community, the land. So when you have these two worldviews clashing, it has led to a really painful history, a history where this deep knowledge and these sacred practices have often just been extracted, taken, without permission, without credit, and without giving anything back. And it's caused real, lasting harm. And there's one story that maybe captures this better than any other. It's the story of Maria Sabina. She was a Mazatec healer from Mexico, and her life became this powerful and, frankly, tragic symbol of what can go wrong. So get this, back in 1955, an American banker, R. Gordon Wasson, takes part in one of her sacred mushroom ceremonies. And what does he do? He goes and publishes a huge article about it in a magazine, revealing her name, her location, everything, all without her consent. And the result was just catastrophic. A flood of foreigners swarmed her tiny village, treating sacred traditions like a tourist attraction. And in the end, her own community blamed her for it. She was ostracized. So the really crucial thing to understand here is that this didn't just hurt one person. Watson's actions literally tore at the social fabric of her community. It broke a system of trust and respect that had been built over generations. And look, this was not a one-off thing. Take ibogaine. It's a super powerful psychoactive from the iboga plant, and it's absolutely central to the Bwiti spiritual tradition. Right now, it's being studied for its incredible potential to treat opioid addiction. But guess what? The Bwiti people, the ones who hold the original knowledge, have been almost completely shut out of the process. Little to no credit and little to no benefit. So if that's the problem, this history of extraction, then what's the solution? Well, the authors of this commentary argue we need a fundamental shift. We need to move toward a path of what they call reciprocity. And this quote from Sandor Ironrope, another co-author, wow, it just cuts right to the heart of it. He says, "That is not research, that is extraction." He draws this incredibly clear, sharp line. You can't have a real partnership without trust and respect, and that means you first have to acknowledge the harm that's been done. Okay, so let's be super clear about what these words mean. Reciprocity. That's about building real relationships where everybody benefits. It's a two-way street. And reparations, that's about justice. It's about taking real, concrete actions to repair the damage that's been done through centuries of this stuff. So what does that actually look like? This isn't just some vague idea. We're talking about tangible things, like Indigenous leaders being co-authors on the research papers. We're talking about Indigenous-led ethics boards that have actual power.
It means sharing the profits if these things are commercialized. And this is so important. It means protecting the sacred lands where these medicines actually grow.
And all of this leads to a really profound kind of new way of thinking about science itself, a way that can hold different truths and different ways of knowing at the exact same time. It builds on this incredible concept called two-eyed seeing, or etuopt munke. It comes from Mi'kmaq elders, Albert and Murdena Marshall, and it's such a powerful idea. The concept is that we learn to see with two eyes. One eye sees the strengths of indigenous knowledge, and the other sees the strengths of Western science. And Marlena Robbins, a Dene scholar and the main author of the commentary, she explains it perfectly. It's not about picking one or the other. It's about weaving them together. When you do that, you get a much richer, more whole, and honestly a more accurate picture of what healing really is. And just look at this picture. This has it all, right? This isn't some sterile lab or a doctor's office. This is a community, together in a ceremony to bring a sacred mountain back to life. For them, healing people is not separate from healing the land. It's the same thing. That's that relational worldview in action. Okay, so we've looked at the problem, we've talked about a path forward. So what is it actually going to take to build a more just and equitable future for psychedelic science? Well, let's start with a hard number. It's pretty staggering. A recent survey looked at 59 psychedelic research centers all over the world. So out of 59 centers, how many do you think had any Indigenous people in top leadership roles? Just one. 1 out of 59. That number, that says everything, doesn't it? It shows this massive power imbalance that has to change. So moving forward requires what the commentary calls decolonizing the field. So what does that really mean? It means we have to fundamentally rethink the power structures. It's about respecting Indigenous communities' authority over their own knowledge. It's about investing in Indigenous researchers. And it's about treating Indigenous ways of knowing as equally valid, equally important methods of inquiry, right alongside science. And really, it all comes down to this final quote from Marlena Robbins, which just sums up the whole vision so beautifully. The real promise of this so-called renaissance isn't just about new drugs for mental health. It's about changing our whole idea of healing, making it more about relationships, more about equity, and putting the wisdom of the people who've carried this knowledge all along at the very center. Which leaves all of us with a really big question to think about. It's not just about what these medicines can do for us. It's about how we choose to engage with them. Moving forward, how can science truly honor its deepest roots to bring about not just individual fixes, but real collective healing?